Welcome today, Terry and Vicky. Over to you, Terry.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And it seems like it's such an appropriate time to have this conversation, because we were just talking offline before the meeting started around, it feels like now that the COVID landscape has changed, things are getting so busy, and there's always deadline after deadline, and there's, Christmas parties coming up and traveling's happening again. So it's more important than ever to be able to have that conversation around mental health, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So as Sarah said, we have got Gotcha for Life here today, which is really exciting. So we've got Vicky Worland, who's the head of program management, and the wife of Gus Worland, who you may have seen everywhere these days. Gus is always getting about. Sometimes you turn on the TV, he's on the Today Show, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere. And it's really great to see, because these guys are doing such great work in this space, and they're spreading the message of mental health, of fitness across the country. So as Sarah said, this is part 3 of the 4-part series. So we did kick off with the psychosocial factors with Mark and Beck from FEFO. Last one was 2 weeks ago, I believe. That was change management with myself and Levant Consulting. So we had Claire, and that was a really interesting one, that one. And I think it's really important with this context to talk about, it's often underestimated the impact of change on mental health, whether it's change at home or change in the workplace. And it really does need to be considered. Today, obviously, we've got Gotcha for Life with Vicky, and then the next one is roles, HR versus WHS, which a lot of people are looking forward to that one. That should be a really interesting conversation. Now, before we get stuck into it, I think it's really important that we let you know that I'm not a registered psychologist, neither is Vicky, but we don't provide clinical advice in this space. However, FEFO do engage a registered psychologist who helps us on all sorts of psychosocial projects. And Vicky will talk about how they manage this internally at Gotcha for Life shortly. So we'll hand over to Vicky. So as I said, Vicky heads up the program management team, and Vicky will give us an introduction to what is Gotcha for Life.
Well, thanks, Terry, and thank you for having Gotcha for Life on these great sessions. I've enjoyed watching them. And so yeah, Gotcha for Life. Basically, we're looking to sort of change the narrative a bit. We're looking to change the conversation around connection and and connecting people. So when we talk about mental health, we don't see it as a stigma and a sticking point. We actually can normalize that conversation around mental health. We actually use the word mental fitness. So basically looking at social connections, which are, that's the main essence of being a human being. But often as we get older, we tend to push that social, emotional side away. So off the back of some work that Gus did a few years ago, we decided that we wanted to increase awareness by taking action to make sure that no one worries alone, and to ensure that that we have someone in our life that we can go to with anything. Gus always uses the expression warts and all. So whatever is going on for you, we need to reach out ourselves to ask that person what's going on, but also be there for that. Be there for them. So we've been around for 5 years, and we're sort of twofold. We basically are looking to increase that awareness so people take action and start to change how they think about mental health. And the second part is that we're a fundraising arm to ensure that we can elaborate on programs to support this approach, to make sure that we can support a healthier conversation around mental fitness.
Great. And as we said earlier, it's so important. And what's your role, Vicky, in Gotcha for Life?
My initially it was just sort of supporting Gus, I think, but then I think my passion as a teacher created a space around the programs that meant that my love for education meant that I could get really deep into looking at what programs were out there. And later on, when I chat a little bit more about those, that's where I get my passion for, being able to extend the knowledge out to others. So I head up the programs now and sort of help people model where it fits in. Anything to do with social and emotional connection is not fixed. It's ever changing, ever moving. And different organizations, different workplaces, different community groups all have different needs. So the bit that I love the most is being able to sort of navigate what they have there already, what they haven't got, and then how we can implement and support what they're doing. We're definitely not coming in to say this is what you should do. We really want to show this, give that support. So my major role is having the fun of designing the programs to make sure that whoever we're working with gets what they're looking for.
Yeah, and a really important point there as well. It's not giving them all the answers, but it's creating that safe space, I think, and having that conversation and then knowing where to go from there. I think it's a really important part.
I think your point on safe space, that is absolutely paramount in this in the mental health space is making sure that we all feel comfortable to be able to talk about anything. So that safe space is crucial.
Especially with the male side of things as well, especially in construction, where it has been a bit of a stigma for a long time now. And I like the way you talk about the warts and all, and the approach that you guys take really helps, reduce that stigma across the male space. What we're going to do now, we're going to jump into a poll, which is going to be quite interesting. So there's 2 questions that will come up. So Sarah, if you could get that going in the background. Question 1 is, if someone you love and adore were going through a tough time and they asked you for help, would you be there for them? Question 2, if you were going through a tough time, would you go to someone you love and adore and ask them for help? So we'll give you 20, 30 seconds to answer this one.
Okay. Almost there, Terry. All right.
Right, how are we looking?
Yeah, how's that look?
There you go.
Alrighty, so we are looking at the results here. So question 1, if someone you love and adore were going through a tough time and they ask you for help, would you be there for them? 100% of people said yes, so that's fantastic. Again, it's how you do that and how do you provide that safe space so they can have the conversation is really important. Now, the second one is really interesting. So the second question was, if you were going through a tough time, would you go to someone you love and adore and ask them for help? So 74% said yes. And interestingly, 26% said no. So any thoughts on that one, Vicky?
Yeah, we do this, and I actually do it with a lot of different groups. I do when we're in workplaces, schools, sporting groups, and it's a really good starter to the conversation because I mean, the indicator is then that if 26% in this case aren't asking for help and aren't able to go to the person that they love and adore, the likelihood is that person isn't going to come to you either and ask for help. So when we look across the mental health space and the worrying signs that are out there with mental illness, what we need to do is flip that around. So the 100% is actually all of us feel comfortable and brave enough at any time, whatever's going on, whether it's a physical thing, whether it's asking for mortgage advice, whether it's relationship advice. We would love to see that second question is 100% up there, because if we're not able ourselves to be brave enough to lean in and ask for help, and again, it doesn't always have to be a personal ask for help, it doesn't always have to be a deep emotional ask for help, it might just be around work, it might be around finances, but we're finding that situational stress, those things that worry us, we're not actually leaning forward to ask for the help. Therefore, the stresses and strains become distressful and then can end up in a crisis situation. So this is the real essence of what we want to see flip over as soon as we can, to make sure that the rates of loss of life in this space actually can go down to that zero suicide.
To be honest, I was quite surprised at that 26%. I didn't expect it to be that high, which is it's an eye opener for me. And I know, like in a work context, you often have a lot of programs in mental health in this space. But if you were going through a tough time personally, would you follow the advice that you're giving out? So if you're a HR or safety professional providing programs and advice, but then you were doing it tough, would you be able to reach out to those, at work or in your personal life to have that conversation? And by the looks of it, some of us, aren't in that space. So I guess the golden question is, how do we get there?
Yeah, and that is the golden question. And I think some people say to us, our vision of zero suicide, it's like, right, really, that's, we're reaching for the stars, and we are. We're saying, well, we need to be bold to reach for that, to see that change, because there aren't any easy answers. But I do think it's the simplicity of actually, and as we move through this session, that village piece around you. Who do you have in your life that's around you, that you love and adore, that you can't be without? How are we doing in that relationship? So the piece around, well, if I'm not actually going to ask for help, then look at my village around me to see, well, if I can build my relationships around that village to be a little bit stronger, then maybe I'll feel, when we talked about feeling safe, I'll feel safer in that space to be able to actually ask anything of them, warts and all. So there's a bit of, if you don't mind, Terry, there's a bit of an activity that I would love the audience to take part in. Normally we would do this, I would see everyone's faces and expressions, and but I'm just going to run you through it. So if we're at an event, we would ask everyone to have a pen and paper. So hopefully you've all got access to that in front of you now. And I'll stop talking once I've given the instruction, but I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes to write down the people that you love and adore and can't imagine being without. So who is that list of people? And we get people to write it down so they can visually see it. And then the second part in a minute that I'll add. So if Terry, if you can sort of watch the clock for 1.5 minutes, just give you that silence to think, who is it that's really important in my life?
So we'll give you another minute to have a really good think about that one.
And I will just add that the reason we do it in silence, if you imagine if we were face to face, it really gives you time to have a moment and think. Often we're racing around and we sort of, oh yeah, no, I've got my village, but this activity really gives you an opportunity to stop and think. Sometimes, people might have 5, 10 people on that list. Some of us might just have 3. There's no wrong or right answer in that. It's just around, who is it that I think about that I need to be in touch with.
And I love the terminology too, village. Like in this modern life, we're so busy, and like you said, it's go, go, go. I think the use of the wording village makes me think about, who's under your roof, who's in your community, which is such an important piece to be connected to that.
Yeah. And once we do this activity, we do it initially now with your immediate village, who you love and adore. But then when you practice what we're going to do, you eventually can then start to feel confident and safe to go, right, well, who's in my work village? Who's in my sports team village? So then you actually realize that you're not necessarily as alone as you might think you are, because actually each of those villages are really important in supporting you when a challenge may arise.
Absolutely. And especially, for the safety people or HR people on the call as well. I've been in that position where you can feel alone in an organization with, different pressures, and taking the time to sit back and go, well, who is in my work village that I can have conversations with, be vulnerable with, and be open with. We don't give ourselves the time to do that. So if you haven't had time to do that today, I definitely recommend doing that in another time.
Yeah.
So Vicky, that's probably about 2 minutes. So
okay, sorry about that, everyone watching. But so then the next piece we do when we're in front of everyone is we just say, just have a little look at that list, and we give you sort of just under a minute to just give yourself a mark out of 10 on how you're performing in each of those relationships. Now, this isn't a test that we're going to look at and we're going to judge you on that. Again, it's more of an inward reflection on, these are the people that I love and adore. How am I performing, if I'm really honest with myself, in these relationships? And give yourself a mark out of 10 on those. So we'll just give you a few seconds just to run down your list and see how you feel you're going. So hopefully you found that not too stressful. And again, if we were face to face, we would then ask people how they found that activity. And some people find it really, really helpful. Some find it a bit confronting. But what we then do now is we say, and it should never be confronting. This is about really leaning in to see who your village is. So it should actually give you that a really nice sense of you know, quite a uplifting feeling. So what we then ask you to do is grab your mobile phone. The wonders of everything that's gone over the last few years is technology. And even though we're a bit over some of the technology all of the time, what we find is if we're feeling a bit vulnerable in any of our relationships, we need an icebreaker. So what we're going to ask you to do now is to choose one of those people who might be rated at 7 or below in how you feel you're being in your relationship. And I'd like you to text them this message. And the message that I send you, you need to do it exactly, and no emojis. It needs to be the full letters. So I just would like you to grab your phone if it's next to you, or write it down ready next to the name, ready to send them when you have your phone. We'd just like you to send them this message. Just say, I love you. So I love you spelt out, no hearts and no shortenings of that. I'm thinking of you. And then see you soon. Kiss, hug, kiss, hug. Now, you can imagine there's a photo, Terry, if you can flick to the photo of Gus presenting in front of the tradies. Gus did this exact activity. Sorry, I've just thrown that curveball at you. So you imagine this group here, they did exactly this activity. And you could hear the whole room change when it's like, oh my God, I really got to send that, and sort of stomachs churning, that vulnerable feeling, you know, your emotion coming up to the top, like I can't send that because I've chosen, you know, whoever. And what we would love for you to do during the rest of the chat is actually, if you do get a reply to that, because you've hopefully sent it and been brave enough to send it to whoever it is, just pop your message in the chat bar. And if you're happy for us just to have a look at those, again, we're not going to judge or anything, but when we do this live, you can imagine we ask everyone to keep their vibrates on or their notifications, and then we get people to share. Most of the time you might get, was that meant for me? Some might say, have you been drinking? You know, have you gone for a drinks at lunchtime? Some may say, have you had a chat from Got You for Life? Because you know, they might have had it themselves. And then other times you get those beautiful messages like, oh, wow, I was just thinking of you too. Thank you so much. Or would love to catch up soon. So just while we go through the rest, just have that there. And if you are happy to share, pop those up, that would be fantastic. But this is just what looking after your village looks like. And then what we ask people to do is to think of that list and maybe choose a day in the week where you say, oh, I'm driving home late every Thursday. I'm just going to think about them and send another message before I jump in the car, or use voicemail and just, you know, press the phone and give them a phone call and chat and check in. And just as an example, there was one that Gus did in one of the tradie talks. And the guy actually reached out afterwards to say, I was really shocked that in the score that I'd given myself. So I did reach out to a friend that I hadn't spoken to. And he then reached out to another friend. And the three of them now have arranged to catch up to go away for a weekend. So just the simplicity of connecting through one simple text message, it breaks down the vulnerability, it breaks the ice. And it's just we find a really beautiful way of reconnecting, because often we can feel embarrassed to pick up the phone, like, oh, I should have rung ages ago, or I forgot, and you start to overthink. So this is just a simple way of reaching out and connecting, to you know, to make that contact with them, let them know you're thinking of them, but also showing them how it can be done. And if you show them how it can be done, they may start doing it. So then you build a better social connection that when those challenging times arise, you can seek help and actually put your hand up and ask them during that challenging time if they can be there for you.
You're right, Vicky. It's such a simple thing to do. And I found when I did this that step 2 being quite an eye-opener. So giving yourself the time to reflect on how you're going in that space allows you to go, do you know what? I could be better in that space with this person, whether that's work or personal. And it's a bit of an aha moment, I found it as well. And step 3, I did do step 3 and had a very funny response from a friend of mine, but actually it worked out really well. He works in the family violence space, which is obviously quite a tough space to work in. And the text message came through at a good time without knowing, but it was just going through this process. And it was good because the conversation kicked up around, well, let's go for a coffee and let's have a chat about, X, Y, Z, which we've got planned. So such a simple thing, but it needs you to be open, vulnerable and brave as well. But some of the things you spoke about, with some of the responses you get back being quite amusing, that's fine. It opens up that that level of trust, I think, and open communication with people. So to put it under work context, so if you don't feel comfortable telling a workmate that you love them, I try and use the gratitude model. So you might want to send them a message to say, look, I'm really grateful for this thing you've done for me, or something like that. That could be another approach to take rather than telling a teammate you love them. But if you do and you feel comfortable, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, and that is a good point. This is that immediate village, but absolutely then finding those open-ended sort of questions that you can engage, and it might be as simple as a project that you worked on, and I'm really proud that I worked on that project with you. It'll be interesting to see what the results are. Just being brave enough just to, whether it's back in the office and you are at the kettle and you're making a cup of coffee, then being brave enough just to ask a simple question, to engage, to then, and it's reciprocal. We talked about that the other day around the fact that not only do you feel good that you've engaged, you see and reflect on how they felt with a simple form of connection as well, and a conversation. You both actually walk away with a bit of a buzz feeling, which, if you're having a flat, I actually really enjoyed that conversation. So again, it's really simple. It doesn't have to be deep and meaningful. It's just a little checkpoint to say, I'm going to check in with my village.
And it may feel hard the first time you do it, but it does get easier. So be brave and have a go. So we'll keep moving on. But if anyone did get a response and actually did send a text message and got a response and feels comfortable putting in the chat, that'd be fantastic. So bringing it back to the health and safety index, we're lucky enough to work with so many organizations with health and safety index. We can grab a lot of data of what's happening in industry. And what we've found was looking at the benchmark data over the last year is we've seen a 3% improvement regarding people feeling comfortable to talk about mental health. So that's great. There's an improvement of 3% that people are feeling more comfortable. And, this is for a number of reasons. Vicky and Gotcha for Life are getting out there and supporting this as well, which we're seeing come through in the data. However, what is concerning is when you look at the bottom graph there, it's still in the bottom quartile compared to other questions in the health and safety index. So I guess the question we need to ask ourselves is, whether it being personal or in our work lives, is how can we help open up the conversation on mental health? And what we saw just then with the village, that's a perfect way to start that conversation. So let me just quickly look at the chat. I can see one coming through here.
I'm sorry, Terry, just wanted to say that the chat was not enabled actually for some reason. So it is now. So if they can.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Right. Okay. Not a problem. Well, let me know, Sarah, if one comes through. So Vicky, a couple of questions for you. So your vision is zero suicide, which is obviously it's a great vision to have, but what does that mean and how are you helping work towards that goal?
Look, as I sort of made reference to before, it is a big vision. But I think off the back of the work we did leading into the foundation, this is something that stuck really tight with it. We had huge discussions around whether it was too bold to have a statement like this, but we very much feel that one suicide is one too many. So for us, it is, again, and I think we have touched on it a bit already, is that actually for that to change and to move to the stars, for that to happen, ultimately we find that most people, if they're worrying alone, will make permanent decisions because they're over worrying, they're not sharing what's going on. So the two ways that we're trying to do that is by increasing awareness around social connectedness. How do we do that? And the way that we're working towards it is the second part of what we do is that fundraising piece. So we raise funds to help support a couple of programs that we enable to happen. So that we can start to really understand that being on our own is not ideal. We need to build our village. And we talk very much in this space around mental fitness. So everyone's really comfortable about their physical fitness. So we're trying to bring, and it's starting, you can start to hear other people using it as well. We look at our mental health as our mental fitness, and it can then become a level. So if I'm checking in on my physical health, I want to check in on my mental health, my mental fitness, sorry. So with that, we talk around our emotional muscle, just like we do our physical muscle. So if we're going to the gym because we're training for something, or we like walking regularly, or I like, you're a sailor and you're going to have whatever the realms of what your physical fitness is, it that you've had an illness and you need to get stronger, so you've got to eat better. We talk about that. We can give ourselves a mark out of 10. And it's all linked to the physical parts of our body. So what we're trying to say is, well, we've got this emotional muscle, which unfortunately quite young in our lives, we start to shut that down. Men especially, very sort of primary age, shut down that emotional muscle and don't really speak with vulnerability and share what's going on. And for girls, it's a bit later. It's not that we don't speak, but we don't necessarily speak up with authenticity. So again, we worry about what's out there and what we should be. So we want to get people to start talking about their emotional muscle and how do we exercise that emotional muscle. So how I'm hopefully moving towards zero suicide is to start to engage and inspire a new conversation. That little poll that we did, how are we going to flip that over? Well, we need to have a different conversation like we're having right now. Then how do we educate that conversation? How do we find the tools around leaning in to understand what vulnerability means to me and actually realizing it's a strength? And then how do we empower people to actually train in this space? Often we find people are willing to do sort of physical first aid training, and they're willing to learn how to upskill with machinery and that sort of thing. But when if we did a poll around how many people in the audience this audience might be a bit different, obviously, but how many people actually are willing or have trained in mental health or mental fitness courses, it's pretty low. So again, it's looking to flip that around, that if we increase our knowledge, then hopefully we can drive towards that target of zero suicides.
And Vicky, I had a number of questions for you today because it's such an interesting work that you do. But I've just looked at the time, it's 12:59, but there's a really important question that I'd love to ask you, and that's around the earlier conversation around, I'm not a psychologist, neither are you, and just wanted to know that how do you manage that in your space?
We were very lucky off the back of the work we did right at the start to get some really good advisory board members that were always there, or have always been there along the way. So there's two sort of things I'd like to add to that. There's various psychologists. There's Dr. Jodie Lowinger from the Anxiety Clinic. She is a great supporter and actually speaks for us as well occasionally. Steve Bidoff was actually in a piece of work that Gus did, and he loved the concept of the simplicity, to really start early with the conversation, identify the stresses and strains, and just have a simple conversation to re-engage our social connection. So we've got him as an advisor. We've got Dr. Hannah as well, a psychologist who looks at relationships and how you can be better connected. And we were really lucky right at the start to, there's an organisation called MindSpot, which is an online mental health provider. And the guys that work with that just out at Macquarie University were right by our side going through everything. And at the moment, we're going through the development stage strategically. And we're actually we have reached out to talk to them again, just to check all the phases, because absolutely, we're not professionals in the space. But we need to know that we're doing everything in the right format to make sure that everyone we talk to is safe, there's no triggering. So we're really lucky in that regard. And then the final thing is, internally, if ever we're at an event, we always make sure that we've got the right support networks in place, just in case anything over emotional is triggered. And all team members across all of the partners we use have mental health first training and other training as they join the team.
Yeah, great. Sounds like you've got a great structure there and well supported. So unfortunately, it's 1 o'clock. So these are half an hour sessions. And again, we could have spoken to Vicky probably for the next couple of hours. But if you do want to get some more information, please head over to their website, and I'll share a slide soon. They're on all the socials, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You've got to start a conversation, Christmas cards and donations on your website now, I see.
Yes, that again is very much enhancing what we've talked about today. How can we engage with a beautiful message? So yeah, those have just literally gone live yesterday. I just saw, Terry, there's 11, is there 11 chats there, Sarah? Are we able to, is there any chance you can call any of those out?
Well, I think Lisa's response from her husband's quite interesting. She said she sent that message out and her husband called immediately asking if I was okay and if everything was okay. I would never say see you soon, and he knows me so well, so he rang to check if he had forgotten something he was supposed to be at.
Yeah, and that happens a few times, but again, it's still, you imagine if that was another friend, but it still is a connection piece. It's checking in. So with that relationship, she absolutely knows they've got each other's back, and it's beautiful to say. Whereas if you just ignored it, even though he knew that, it has created a conversation. And then now hopefully she'll go back and say, wow, we did this session, it got me thinking. And then it starts the next conversation that she then engages with him to think along similar lines. So that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Also, there's just a question here. What are the analytics you would use to genuinely measure mental health and psychosocial hazards?
Is that for Terry or for me?
Terry, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, internally, we use the health and safety index. So I know that it's 105 almost now. So if you wanted to talk offline, feel free to reach out or head to our website, which has a lot of information, and you can book a demo to see the health and safety index and what data you can get from inside your organisation through that.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, I think that's the time up. So as Terry said, contact FEFO or Vicky if you want any more information. We'll put their details on the email later today. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Terry. And we'll see you next week, Terry.
Thanks so much.
Very much.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Vicky.